Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast. This is Abe, your host. Today I'm going to be doing a video on Ghosts of Beaumont Inn. This is a place that I worked for about 8 years. It's got a lot of history. Basically, it was a girls' college during the Civil War. The South, the parents sent their girls off to Beaumont Inn. It was called Daughters College, basically for protection during the Civil War. So it's a pretty old place, full of a lot of different ghost stories that I collected over 8 years. I was a bartender there, bartender and server. But yeah, it's a video that I've been, not so much a video because it's in podcast form, but a recording that I've been wanting to do for a long time, honestly, since I started this channel, but wasn't really able to do because of being employed there. The owners, the Deadmans, are real odd about, honestly, like, I don't know what the word would be, but getting noticed for the paranormal. And it's not even really just that either. Like, let me give you an example. They were hit up by literally the Ghost Hunters show and turned it down because they didn't want to be associated with the paranormal, which I thought was silly. I mean, I've always heard the phrase, bad publicity is good publicity, but honestly, I would think it's cool. I would think it's neat. To me, knowing that a hotel is haunted or something, that would make me want to stay there more. That, and it's literally the Ghost Hunters show. Like, that's aired literally across the whole globe, I'm pretty sure. But it's not even just the paranormal. It's like Dixon Deadman, the owner, he turned down, one of the owners, the owner's son, he turned down an opportunity to be on Diners, Dashes, and Dives, or I think the show's name is. It's on like Cooking Channel, shit like that. Just because he didn't like the name Diners, Dives, and which I thought was just ridiculous. Just throwing away free money, pretty much. Free publicity. Then you got a bunch of servers sitting around in bumfuck Egypt, Harrodsburg, sitting around twiddling their thumbs on a Friday night. Like, yeah, bro. You wouldn't have that problem, if you would take free publicity. But yeah, so I figured I'd go ahead and give you literally, I don't think I don't know. I've got notes here. I'm just going to go through the notes. It's literally 8 years worth of collection of different people's accounts, different coworkers. Let's see. But yeah, I had worked there for 8 years. Let me start with that. Kind of start with my history of what happened with me. Drinking some coffee, so I might pause here and there. I worked there for 8 years. Worked there like 6 days a week. For 8 years straight, 6 days a week, guaranteed, But I had started wearing down. 8 years without a vacation, and I was due a vacation after like year one. So they basically ripped me off 7 years worth of vacation. All I wanted it was like a week's paid or 2 weeks paid vacation. So 7 of those they ripped me off, and I kept asking people about it. I'd ask my boss. She'd be like, "No, you need to talk to Dixon." And every time I'd talk to Dixon, honestly, he was a dick. Dixon. His parents named him the perfect name, honestly. He was just a dick to me. Um, I just got kind of tired of being treated like shit after 8 years. Discouraged because I'd come in and do my best and just get shit on like every day. So I just got tired of it, you know. There was several little things. I'm not going to go into detail because it's the past and it's done and it's over with. And I have a stable job now where I'm happy and get treated well. So honestly, it's weird. Like I make less money now stocking, but I'm happier doing it because I'm treated better. I'm actually treated like a human being. I'm not treated like I'm stupid all the time, you know. That helps a lot, you know. Money can't buy happiness. But let's see. But yeah, the name Beaumont is. I'm looking at notes here, pausing it for a couple seconds here and there. The name Beaumont means beautiful mount in French. As far as I know, Robert E. Lee stayed there. I may be wrong, but there was a recipe on the dessert menu, like a Robert E. Lee orange and lemon cake, which I remember serving a lot. And the story goes is that he would go basically from hotel to hotel, and he'd always bring that recipe with him and have the kitchen make that for him. So we got the recipe, and yeah. But that brings me to my first like ghost story that I heard over the years bartending there. Um, there's this guy, we called him, his nickname was Batman. And that was literally like his nickname that he kind of gave himself. He kind of gave it to himself, but at the same time, like other people did. The reason why he was called Batman was um, in the front office, basically they had a bat that came in through a chimney or something. I think it was a chimney. That's not very uncommon here in Kentucky that a bat would come through a chimney. So I'm pretty sure it was a chimney came through and was flying around the front office. And he always got up real early in the mornings. Like he'd be up at 5 a.m., you know, walking around the inn before the sun had even risen. Um, so he caught it. So from then on, he was called Batman. But yeah, so Batman pretty much he had a strange encounter. He actually had several strange encounters, but this is the only one that I really remember all the details to. The other one was something about his wife and there being a ghost in the bed. But I don't remember enough of it to like tell the story. I don't want to butcher it. Uh, but yeah, so Batman, um, he was up front early one morning, and basically they were sitting there talking about how Robert E. Lee had stayed there. And there's a big picture of Robert E. Lee in one of the side rooms, like a parlor room or whatever. And next thing he knows, the picture just falls off the wall while they're in the middle of talking about it. Um, and as far as I know, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Robert E. Lee stayed there. So does his ghost like still reside at Beaumont Inn or come by to visit? I'm not sure, but just thought it was a weird coincidence that, you know, you're sitting there talking about this historical figure, and then literally the picture on the wall falls off of that historical figure. So could be coincidence, you know, but I think that's a like a 1 in a million chance. That's a little odd to just be wrapped up as, oh, it's coincidence. But yeah, that's a one little story right there. Let me see, I got them all written down. Um, yeah, there's some footage that's actually out there. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube or not. You could actually probably look it up. It'd probably be like, I don't know, ghost footage, light flickering, Beaumont Inn. Um, one of the porters was working there. For anybody who doesn't know what a porter is, basically in the restaurant industry, they're like young kids under 18. We used them as like food runners for the kitchen to the dining room, but they were also like kind of like bag boys. Whenever you would check into the inn, they would come and they'd give you a tour of Beaumont Inn. They'd have like a bunch, like a whole script memorized of what needed to be said and all that. Um, but yeah, like I was walking through, I was bartending one night upstairs in this little mini bar called the Owl's Nest and closing up and all that jazz. So I was walking through the main dining room, which is like basically a 5-star dining room. White tablecloths, everybody dresses fancy. You gotta like, it's super strict. I hated working in it because you had to like, it had all these weird rules like you could pick up a plate from your left hand. You have to put down plates with your right. Just petty stuff like that. Uh, I remember one time I picked up this old woman's wine glass wrong. I picked it up by the actual glass and not the stem, and she smacked my hand. Um, she's kind of lucky too that because my usual first reaction is to punch somebody in the face when they do that, and I was like 2 seconds from literally just knocking the dog shit out of her. But that's just instinct for me. I guess being abused as a kid and my ex-wife abusing me, like honestly, my first reaction is to just knock the dog shit out of someone. So, which I'm glad she didn't. I would have ended up in jail. But yeah, so I was walking through, back to what I was saying, closing this bar up, and these two porters are freaking out, and they're like filming this light. And there's actually another ghost story that I'll tell after this with this light, but they're filming this light, and I'm looking at the light, and it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there. They're like, dude, check this out. Every time we film this light, it's glitching out on the camera phone, but when you look at it normally, it's not doing nothing. I'm like, holy shit. And I looked at it, and it was sure enough glitching out on the camera phone, but like when you looked at it normally, it wasn't doing nothing. So I thought that was wild. So I started telling him, I was like, well, like that light they've had weird stuff happen with that light before in general. We had a server that worked there, and she was like alone there, opening up the dining room for lunch that morning, and the light was swaying and flickering, and she got the fuck out of there. Was freaking out, like, I'm not working, I'm going home, this place is haunted. So I mean, it was a different light, but we've had weird light problems with the main dining room in general. I keep saying we, but I mean, I worked there almost a decade, so yeah, it's a little. I'll catch myself still saying we. But that was another account that was odd. Let me see. Yeah, I had a buddy named Jerry who was a chef there. Rest in peace. He's dead now. That was a pretty sad occasion. I'll talk a little bit about him in general. Jerry, before I get to the paranormal part of it, how I might even dedicate this podcast to him. Excuse me if I get like a little sad talking about it, but I don't know, it fucked with me. It bothered me. I worked with him for 8 years, and um, that's my buddy, man. My buddy who died. But yeah, so Jerry was a trip, man. I know he had did some time for some drug issues, something like that. I'm not going to go into details. So being locked up, you say whatever the fuck you want. You know, even when you're on the outside in the free world, you still have a little bit of that mentality. Um, I loved him to death as a person, but as a coworker, man, he was hard to work with. Um, but yeah, he died. He came in, he got fired from Beaumont just like me. Um, and he used to come in still though to the bar and have a couple beers and do like his homework, his chef homework for the restaurant that he was working at. And he came in one night, and it was funny because he actually gave me his phone number that night. So I had texted him. I texted him something crazy like, "Hey baby, it's me. Had a really good time last night." And I couldn't help but laugh because that night he had actually died. So when I seen his wife at the funeral, I was like, "By the way, uh, if you seen any weird texts, that was me." And she kind of laughed and kind of made her, I tried because I mean she was at her husband's funeral, so I mean I don't know. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy, but for me, like when something sad's going on, I try to make someone laugh, with like a real, not like overly laugh. Like I'm not sitting there cracking jokes like a stand-up comedian at a funeral, but just throw in something, a little joke here or there, just to break the tension. And I don't know. I just thought it was funny. But yeah, so where was I at, Jerry? Yeah, he had come in and was drinking, and he went to go hang out with my buddy Luke that night. And he drank with him and went home, and he got out of his car and pretty much just dropped dead. They say it was a heart attack. He's just getting older, and honestly, me and a lot of the kitchen staff in general over there, we all weren't really taking care of ourselves. We all drank like fish, smoked like freight trains, and never went to the doctor unless we were dying. So there's no telling what was going on. But yeah, the reason why I brought up Jerry, though, that's a little back history of who he is and a little bit about him. But he had a ghost account. We were sitting there, I was closing bar like years ago, and we had like a couple stragglers who were sitting at the bar talking. Like, "Oh man, you guys ever have any ghost stories here or anything?" And I just kind of told them, I said, "Look, I'm not really allowed to talk about that." Like, which kind of sucks too, because it's like people would ask me, "Well, what do you do, for fun?" That's one of the questions that I would get all the time. And me and my wife would ghost hunt, like, well, honestly, I like ghost hunting for fun, like that's our hobby, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. And then they're like, "Well, why aren't you allowed to talk about it?" Well, because my boss is a dickhead and won't let us talk about that. So, like, it's kind of hard to, you know, customers trying to get to know their bartender or their server, and you're not even allowed to talk about yourself. Not even really allowed to be yourself or express yourself. It's kind of lame. It's kind of hard to make tips like that. So, um, I don't know. Shitty judgment for the Deadmans, honestly. But the mom and dad were cool. It's just the son that was kind of a dickhead. Uh, pardon my French. Can you tell I don't have any bad feelings towards it? But yeah, so he was like telling them, "Yeah, I had a ghost experience," and Jerry, he just didn't give a fuck. He's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna tell him. I don't care." Um, he said, "I'll tell you, but you can't tell, anyone else that I told you this." And they're like, "Okay, our lips are sealed." So he was telling them that basically he had been prepping for dinner that night. Because I don't know if anyone's ever worked a kitchen or a restaurant. Like, kitchen staff is there all day. It takes all day to prep for a dinner, a huge dinner. Because you got to think, like, I mean, think about it in general, like Thanksgiving at your house, you know. It'll take all day for you to cook for Thanksgiving dinner for 6 or more people. So, I mean, you got to think how many, they're doing that every day, you know, for 50 to 100 people, maybe 200 people. So that's quite a bit of food. You're there all day. So he was prepping for dinner and basically had walked into the um, deep freeze or walk-in cooler, whatever you want to call it. And there was like a shelf. So he sees someone on the corner of his eye standing behind the shelf, and he's thinking it's another coworker. He has a full-blown conversation with this person, back and forth conversation, and just about something about food and what needs done and blah blah blah. So he goes back upstairs and he's like, he sees the person who he thinks he thought was talking to, and he's like, how did you get like in front of me? Like, wait, what? I just talked to you. And they're like, no, like no one's in there. You were all alone, man. So that was his little story. I thought that was wild to have like a full blown conversation with someone, and yeah, they're not even there. But there was some weird stuff that happened with me, I guess, and me and another bartender, C Money would be her name. I would always close up bar on Saturday nights. For some reason, they never knew how to rotate the schedule, so I always ended up closing bar every single Saturday, which was kind of shitty because you're like first to come in, last to leave. So I don't know. They gave me the short straw for 8 years straight. But enough bitching about that. But yeah, so like I had heard basically one night. Actually, probably it was probably about 5 or 6 times the whole time I was working there. It got to the point where it was so often I was used to it. It didn't even freak me out anymore. But there was like this footstool thing, this bar that ran across the bottom of the bar, to where anytime anyone kicked it or sit their feet on it, like you could hear it across the whole bar. And or if the bar is empty and there's no music playing, you can hear someone accidentally kick the bar with their feet because it's kind of crammed a little bit. Um, so like I'm just cleaning up the bar, closing it down by myself, and next thing I know, it sounds like someone's kicking the bar, just sitting there at the bar kicking their feet. So I get freaked the fuck out. I finish cleaning up and I get the hell out of there, and I go to the bar upstairs and I'm like, dude, like I'm not lying. This is just, it freaked me out. And C Money, I didn't even really get to finish what I was saying. She's like, someone was sitting at the bar, weren't they, kicking their feet? I said, yeah. She's like, yep. I think they called him like George or something. They would, but yeah, like George was the ghost that haunted the bar, the downstairs bar. And that's what he would do. He was always the last one to leave the bar. He would always, when you were closing up, kick his feet on the bar, or hit the top of the bar with his hand. Or it was like someone was legit sitting there just waiting for a drink. It was pretty wild. But there was another little small thing. Well, not really small. It was actually kind of wild that happened upstairs. We had a black bartender. The only black dude that worked there, like, ever. I think we had, like, one black girl that worked there, like, very rare. I don't know, I guess just enough to not get in trouble or get called racist. They'd hire a black person every now and then. But this dude, he got fired. Damn, this whole list keeps going on people getting fired. But he got fired. He struggled with like substance abuse like me and stuff. Um, but he was sitting upstairs, or not sitting, but he was bartending upstairs, and they had a bottle literally fall off the shelf and bust, like an entire full bottle. And I guess he had told me glasses had done the same thing. So the upstairs bar was supposedly haunted, you know. Um, I think a lot of the reason why a lot of this shit was haunted was there's a couple weird things of why I believe it's haunted, Beaumont Inn. For one, there's a tombstone that's just chilling in the tool shed. I've looked the name up on it as John Christ, which I thought was odd. We used to make the joke of, oh, it's Jesus' brother, it's Jesus' cousin. But yeah, there's just a tombstone just chilling in the tool shed, which I thought was odd because we'd go out there and smoke cigarettes during the winter when we were during shutdown. We'd shut down for about half a month and clean the whole kitchen, clean the whole restaurant, clean the whole inn. And I'd always help out and do that. But there had actually been another case too, like underneath Beaumont was pretty much like these tunnels, a huge tunnel system. It's actually kind of dope. I used to get bored sometimes and I'd just go underneath the inn and just walk around. But try not to get in trouble, but I don't know, it's just neat. It's like you could go under the entire inn. It was like a tunnel system. But someone had found bones in there, like human bones. I don't remember who found it or how they found it, but the cops had come up there and they kept it on the DL. We're trying to keep it all hush hush, but yeah, human bones were found underneath the inn. And the cops had to come and they had to like excavate it and check the dating on it to make sure it wasn't like a recent murder or something crazy like that. Uh, but yeah, so I mean, there's definitely two reasons why I think that it would be haunted. Was one, that it was built on burial grounds. Literally, the building was built over a dead body. I think two, whoever that John Christ is, I don't know if it was the bones that they excavated or if it was, I don't know. It's weird to me that there's a tombstone just chilling inside of the tool shed. So where that grave is, I'm not sure. Something else weird that happened was like you had the main inn. This is another reason why I believe the Beaumont's haunted. Was you had the main inn, which was connected with all three of the restaurants, and you had literally a building across the street with like several rooms that were available over there. Some of the rooms were labeled like 30, 31, 32, 33. But yeah, I had heard that one of the rooms over there, I'm just going to say 32, I'm not positive which one it is haunted. We would have over the years, it was one particular room that we'd always hear about. It would be super cold. They could never get the temperature right. They'd have to call the front desk. Hey, it's too cold in here. I can't get the heat working. So yeah, that was crazy. And they had like a picture inside the actual room that would always tilt. And you could move it, and every single time you'd move it, it would move back to the way it was. That is actually another video that I'm sure is out there on YouTube if you can find it. But the reason why I believe that is haunted is let's see, I think it was the owners. I think it was his mom had stayed there, and she ended up dying in one of the rooms, and they had to remove her body and all that. Miss Deadman. But yeah, and the reason why I think it's her is because my buddy Luke had told me a story, basically that like somebody was staying in those rooms, and like the inn was kind of empty at the time. There wasn't very many people staying there, and I guess he was the only person staying in that little tiny building. And he's like, "Hey, who's the old woman that's staying over there?" And Luke's like, "Pretty sure you're staying over there alone." And he's like, "No, she's always sitting in that patio chair outside. Every time I leave the room, I walk by her and I say good morning, and she doesn't really say anything to me. She just ignores me." So Luke checked. He called the front office and stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, he's staying over there alone." Uh, so yeah, that kind of freaked him out. Freaked everyone out because it's like, yeah, no one's over there except you. Where it's an old woman sitting in a chair, I believe personally, and so did Luke. We kind of believed that it was Miss Edmund still, you know. Um, let's see. But yeah, basically that's it as far as like ghost stories. My wife, she had. Well, here's another one. This was Sammy. I wanted to do this podcast with Sammy, but she's at work right now. She works first shift and I work third, so honestly, it's been kind of hard to schedule a podcast with her. It sucks. Honestly, it sucks. Uh, that we never get to see each other. Like literally, we see each other like 5 seconds a day. It's fucking horrible. Um, I mean, it sucks being married to someone and you can't even see them. Not that I would, leave her or anything, because it's not our fault. It's just how it's worked out right now. But yeah, she had a ghost experience up at Beaumont, and I would have rather her tell it, but I don't know when the chance is that I'll get to see her again long enough for her to record her actual account. But it was basically she was walking through somewhere upstairs. I was closing bar upstairs, and I think she was either walking outside of the kitchen in the hallway or oh, I have another one now that I'm thinking about it, but I'll tell you that in a second. But yeah, she had basically, it was just a real quick encounter that she had felt like a breath on the back of her neck, a real cold breath, and she had actually heard it too, like like someone literally walking up behind her and breathed on her neck. But yeah, there's in the same area, the same location was basically we had an ice machine and it was sitting right outside of a manager's office. And on several different occasions, we had a water pitcher that would sit on top of it and it would get thrown off. And I'm not talking like, oh, it just got nudged off or pushed off by some unseen force. I'm talking like thrown across the room. So, angry poltergeist right there in that area. Particularly around the ice machine and all that, it just throws shit. But I mean, that's all I really got from what I collected over the years on ghost stories. I have like two other little stories that are not really ghost related. One of them's a UFO story, and the other one's a cryptozoological story. I'll go ahead and tell the UFO story because it's a little shorter, and then the cryptozoological story is actually my personal story, so I'll go ahead and end the podcast on that. But the UFO story, we had a guy that worked there. His name was Dane, and he was honestly like super skeptical about everything. You talk to him about ghosts, he thinks you're stupid. He'd call you stupid to your face. I mean, I love the dude to death, you know. I'm not talking ill of him because he's one of my best friends, and um, but yeah, super skeptical. Like you talk to him about UFO, he's like, "Oh, that's stupid," or you talk to him about ghost, he's like, "Oh, that's dumb, that's fake." So super skeptical, which is cool, you know. To each their own. Everyone's got to take their own spiritual path. Um, and he wasn't a non-spiritual person. He wasn't like atheist or anything because he believed a lot in like chi and stuff like that. Um, he tried to explain to me what he thought ghosts were. He compared it to a fingerprint. Like when you die, your fingerprints are still here. It's kind of the same concept. I'm like, I don't know. To me, I was just like, that's kind of a dumb way to say it, but that's just me personally. Um, But so he believed a lot in like energy and like the Shaolin monks and stuff. He definitely believed in like the videos you see of them doing crazy stuff. But him and my boss one night were walking from the parking lot to the main inn for something, and they had both seen a UFO. And the reason why I believe the story so much is because my boss had seen UFO before, and me and her had shared our UFO stories with each other, and her kids had seen the UFOs with them. They were driving around and seen UFO, and the kids all seen it. Everyone's seen it in the car. So I mean, we had swapped stories before and talked about it. But to me, what made me believe the story 110% was Dane walked with her and seen it with her. Just described it as like a low flying light, you know, in the sky. It was a UFO. It wasn't no plane. It wasn't no helicopter. It wasn't no drone. Um, and it freaked Dane out. Like Dane's expression when he seen it was the best because where he's such a skeptic, for me, like seeing his face and his reaction towards it was just priceless. Like I think it legit freaked him out. Which I know that feeling firsthand from when I seen my UFO. It legit freaked me out, man. I couldn't sleep that night. Uh, it was just wild. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close this podcast off though with one more story. This was my personal story. Um, it's not a UFO or ghost story, but it's actually a zoological story, which I thought was crazy. Um, so the restaurant that I worked at was the Old Owl Tavern. Um, and the reason it's called that is because back in the day, the Deadmans had owned a bourbon company called I think it's Wise Owl Bourbon. Um, it'd been like a family bourbon recipe for generations, and they actually re-released it and they put it out now. I think it's overpriced and overrated personally. I mean, it's $100 a shot. It's not that good. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, if I'm spending $100 on one shot of whiskey, I better be drunk for a week, you know, or drunk for a month. But so this lady, she was drunk as hell. Like I don't know, just real talkative, real loud. I think she was drinking wine, um, which I'm used to. I'm not making fun of her because you bartend for years, you're gonna see it all. But she's like, "Oh, did they name the bar after that huge owl that flies around?" And I was like, "What?" And I didn't believe her because she was so drunk. I was just like, "Oh, here's a dumb drunk telling some crazy ass story." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Yeah, I went out to go smoke, and there's a gigantic owl flying around in the parking lot." And I'm like, "How big is it?" And she's like, "It's huge. Like the wingspan's like if tip to tip of each wing, it's like 4 foot, 5 foot long." And I'm like, Nah, I said they named the restaurant after the bourbon that they owned. I said I don't really think in the city it's not a big city, but I mean it would be highly unlikely for a 4 or 5 foot owl to be flying around. Um, I was just like, so I just was like, no, they named it after bourbon, and she kept trying to talk to me about it, but I was closing bar at the time, so I was kind of tired and frustrated. Um, Normally I would have sat there and been cool with listening to it, but I guess where she was so drunk and where I was closing up, I really didn't want to get into cryptozoology with someone at that time. Um, Normally, I would have been all over it. I would have been like, oh, fuck yeah, tell me more about it. But not at that time of the night. I was just ready to go home. And so I just blew it off like it was nothing. And about a week later, I was outside taking the trash out in the middle of the night. And I seen this huge tip to tip wingspan, 5 foot bird fly super low, just fly over the parking lot. And I was all alone. I'll be fucking damned. Um, so that's actually the first time I really shared that to anyone else, just because uh, bartending and serving at Beaumont, like I would always be bringing in weird books like occult books or paranormal or conspiracy books. So everybody already knew that I was already into that stuff. Um, but I never really shared a lot about it because I'd always get made fun of, and everyone always thought I was just like making this shit up because where I was so interested in it, they thought that it was just all in my head, I guess. And so I just got tired of getting made fun of, so I just never really shared it. But I don't know, with this channel, I pretty much shared all my different paranormal, different UFO, different stories like that. I don't mind sharing it because that's what this channel is. For me, it's a way to learn more about this type of stuff, to talk about this type of stuff, the stuff that interests me. Um, I don't know. It's kind of my dream for this to become a career, perhaps. I think it would be awesome. If it happens, cool. If it doesn't, I'm still going to have this channel. I'm still going to put it out because um, it's what I like. It's what I enjoy. I enjoy doing this for you all, and I enjoy hearing you all's stories. And I don't know. This is what I love to do, and this is what makes me happy. But that's all she wrote. There you go. Ghost Stories of Beaumont Inn. Y'all have a good day.